I saw a name pop in earlier that already left, so interesting. Anywho, welcome in. My name is Sharon, is how you pronounce my name. So I'm Sharon Castillo. I am owner and principal facilitator of Fruitful Training Group. So thank you so much for being in the room and being on time in the room. I appreciate that. So we're together for about 60 minutes. I'm going to say it's going to be a fast and furious 60 minutes. So I like packing as much information in as I can to give you something you can use, try, think on, reflect on after today. Today matters if you do something with it tomorrow, right? So we're here to talk about influence that inspires, and this is based on John Maxwell's book, Becoming a Person of Influence. So a quick introduction of myself and how we're going to handle today. So with our time, I'll do my intro, then we'll get into some talks around some insights from the book, an inventory that he suggests we take, and then the thank you and next steps. All right, so that is I am she. I am owner of Fruitful Training Group. And so I've done lots of training and facilitation, and I've done that for a variety of audiences. My background includes HR and also professional development. I've worked in retail management and in education. And now what I get to do what I really enjoy, which is teaching and talking and conferences and all of that good stuff, things related to learning. So I'm married and I've got 2 kids and a dog. And I think I may have mentioned already, but I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So that's a little about me. Now about Fruitful Training Group, a quick intro. So we are a woman-owned and minority-owned business, John Maxwell certified. You'll see that seal. So we can do 5 behaviors. We can do DISC. We're a certified small business as well. So a few highlights of the certifications that we have and what we do. We create content and training. We deliver that training, whether it's in person or virtually. And so some of the topics that we enjoy talking about include all things leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging, what we like to refer to as power skills, and not just calling them soft skills, but those human skills. And then again, DISC and 5 behaviors. As a John Maxwell certified team member, I can also facilitate what we call masterminds, which I've taken a few snippets from that today. So he's got some books and content that we can, I can facilitate sessions on, and maybe we want a cohort to go through and learn and dive deeper and learn from one another. And so that's something that we offer as well through Fruitful Training Group. Okay, so that's who I am, that's who we are. And aside from all of that, we are here to talk and learn about influence. Yes, so let's get to that. So we're going to talk about some insights into influence, but I'd like you to take a look at this list. I'll give you a moment. What would you say is one thing that they all have in common? You can, so I want this to be an interactive session. You can respond in chat, you can unmute, you can raise your hand. Right now there's just a few of us, so unmuting is all right. I'll watch the chat as well. What do you think they all have in common?
I'd say they're all leaders, right?
Okay, so all leaders in some way, yes.
Mhm.
DC Sandoval is my nephew and he's 17. Is he a leader? Good question. Maybe depends on the day and the group he's in, but absolutely. So leadership pops out. Any other thoughts? Because they're not all the same sex or gender, right? They're not all in the same profession. Don't all even make the same amount of money. May not all be as popular in a positive way. So whether it's my 17-year-old nephew, Mark Cuban, and even Adolf Hitler, all of them have influence. And the same goes with us who are in the room. right? So if you're in the Zoom room, you've got influence. If your life in any way touches the lives of other people, there's influence. So that's from, the teacher to the president, right? So we all have some level of influence in our lives. Everything we do in some way impacts somebody else, and it's so important to remember that. So since that's the case, and you've got influence, here's a question to consider. Now maybe we would have to break out into different categories to say sure. But if the whole world followed me, would it be a better world? Maybe if I just narrowed it down, what if my whole company, my whole department, my whole team, my whole household, my whole family, the extended version, if they all followed me, would it be a better family? Would it be a better office, a better environment, a better city? Whatever it is, or whatever areas and where you feel that you lead. So that's a question worth us asking ourselves every day. So now I'd like you to take a moment to think and write down. You can share in chat, or you can write down for yourself. What are 4 words that come to mind when you hear influence? So you can feel free to put that in the chat. 4 words that come to mind when you hear influence, and I'll give you a moment to think about that. All right, so Charmaine, thank you. Makes you think leader, speaker, impact, change. Wonderful. I'll wait for the responses from Jackie and Shalisa. Okay, so I see some overlap there with impact and leader. Community and opportunity. Charmaine, I want to ask you a question. When you say change, how do you connect that? Why did influence make you think of that?
I think of influence as change as like maybe you influence someone to change their perspective of a certain thing, or influence their style. So they're kind of changing up and being different based off of what you did.
Okay, yeah. What you said, did, the comment you made, lots of those things. Wonderful. And then I see Shalisa. You say opportunity. Will you elaborate on that? Are you able to come off mute, or should we watch for chat for you, Shalisa? And then I see Jackie added persuasion, character growth, and then next level. I'll move over to Jackie. Okay, I see you putting there in chat. Opportunity by being able to connect with others. Gotcha. Thank you. And then next level, Jackie, what do you mean?
So when I think about those that have, the ability to persuade me, there is something that I see in them that I can easily say, okay, am I where I want to be? And maybe what I see in them is the potential of my own growth to take myself to the next level.
Ah, gotcha. So it almost seems like some level of inspiration would be there as well.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And so you mentioned something that I wanted us to think about. So we won't move into the breakout room since it's just a few of us. But the idea around think about who is somebody who has influence with you. And Jackie has started us off and didn't even know this was there. Why the people who have influence with you, why do they have that influence? So thoughts from Shalisa or Charmaine. So think about a person, actually, if you get someone in mind, what is it about them that allows them to have influence with you?
I'd say amount of experience and level of professionalism, maybe, and a little bit of accolades. Just like business owners are very inspirational, and like that's a I admire the owner of my company. So yeah.
Awesome. So there's the accolades, there's some kind of results maybe sometimes that are there
Mhm.
as well. Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing that. So let's talk and see what John has to say about the insights that he shares to influence. So I'm going to highlight just a few of the ones that are listed. We won't have time to talk about all of them during our session today. But he says that leadership is influence, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Our influence with others is usually not in all areas, is something that is mentioned as well. Let me turn off our waiting room for others who may join us. Hey there, welcome into the room, and I'll turn off that sound. Our influence with others is usually not in all areas. So two ways I can go is there's people that I have influence with, but I don't get to influence everything or every area of their life. And the same thing with you. There are some people who may have influence in work or business decisions, but maybe they don't have influence with you in personal or relational decisions, right? So your influence with others is not going to be in all areas, and it's not going to even be the same, honestly, even within your own household or your own family, even if you think about family dynamics, right? So there are some people in the family. I mean, we've got holidays coming up. It's a great time to even think about that. There's some people in the family that everybody's like, well, what is so-and-so doing? are we going there? And then with others in the family, it's like, I'm not listening. I don't really care. So what makes that determination? And as you evaluate yourself, the people you have influence with or the levels you have, we want to encourage you after today to start taking an inventory, assessing that. Does my influence need to grow with some certain people? And what can I do to make that happen? Now, with that influence comes, the responsibility. People need to be able to trust you, and trust the direction you're leading them in. So our influence can be positive or negative. Your influence can grow, again, if you are intentional about that growth. And people of positive influence really add value to others. So a question I encourage you to ask yourself, even for the rest of this week, whether it's professionally or personally, is set your intention every day. Who can I add value to today? How can I add value? My aunt and I had a conversation just about 2 days ago, and she was talking about, I guess, this magnetism, I think, that she has, and I was sharing that and encouraging her in that as well, and I said to her, I said, you add value to people. People feel better in your presence. They feel seen, heard, encouraged. So she's the person that's always got the nice word. And so what happens is, because of something simple like that, she gains influence. So every interaction we have with people can either be building or busting our influence, right? And so if those interactions with her are that kind word, following back up on the thing you talked about last time, asking about how something went, just a check-in phone call, then guess what? If there's time for real decisions to be made, I genuinely feel like I can trust what this person has to say. So we want to concentrate and think on, how am I adding value to others? Now, John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. What are your thoughts about that quote? Leadership is influence. What do you think was at the heart of what he meant there? So I'll give you a moment to share in chat, or if you'd like to unmute to share out loud.
You know, this is such a very thought-provoking word, because people may say that you have influence, and it's just kind of something that I can honestly say, I've never really set and processed influence, but it is something based upon the work that I do, based upon my engagement in the community. So for me, when I hear influence and this simple statement, nothing more, nothing less, I'm going to go back to a workshop that I just did. And one of the participants, she said, you know, Jackie, you've really inspired me. And it was a 2-day workshop that was on women's leadership. And so when I think about the ability to influence, I think sometimes it's also showing others what is possible. What is possible.
Absolutely. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. So how the influence and people attach things like the word you said, inspiration, to that. I'm inspired to do something or not do something. And again, the last slide said, which direction am I influencing people in or inspiring them toward? One of the things that John talks about a lot is we do not have to attach leadership to titles. And that's why he says leadership is really about influence. Have you ever worked or been around people to where someone in the group has influence, but they are not the leader? You could put that in the chat or give a thumbs up. It's not the person necessarily with the title. Others follow people, right? So they're those decision makers maybe in a room. I used to be a school teacher. There were people in the classroom who had influence that were not me as the teacher. Right? And it could have been because of reputation, connection, level of communication with those people or whoever it was that was their peer. I was a new teacher. So you're the new teacher, Miss C, and I've known this guy for 7 years. And now we're in a class together. Guess who's influencing what I do? Right? Sure, you got your rules, teacher. So the title does not matter. And I think that's empowering as well for us to realize I don't have to be the person with the title. I can still work on building my influence in whatever circles I'm in. And speaking of circles, here's an activity that John asks us to do from the book. And again, this is based on the book, Becoming a Person of Influence by John Maxwell. And so what I'd like you to do where you are is to draw a circle, if you would, please. And you're going to make this compass. You don't have to do all of the parts in the middle, just the north, south, the east, and the west. I think it's interesting because we say east first when it really looks like the word we across the middle. So it should be west and east, but that's how I remember it. It's the word we. So if you do north, south, west, and east, if we're reading left to right, that sounds awkward. So leadership and influence first starts, John says, with yourself. And I have to share a couple of notes. Here's the question you need to ask. Would I follow me? What is it like? Here's some questions to consider, to ponder after today. What is it like to work with me? What is it like to be led by me, to be taught by me? What is it like to be married to me? What is it like to lead me? Asking ourselves those questions, trying to look at ourselves through the lens of someone else. Ultimately, if I'm going to influence, I first need to be able to say, I would follow me in an objective way. And so he says this, though, we must always work first, hardest, and the longest on ourselves before we can influence anyone else. And it starts with the simple things. It starts with deciding to show up on time. It starts with starting to show up and I have a smile, because guess what? Can me showing up on time and or with a smile or frown influence or impact, because we use that word, someone else's day? Absolutely. So I decide to show up with a smile. I'm managing myself first. I'm having positive thoughts first. I'm affirming myself first. And then I can influence others, showing up on time, showing up with a smile, having a ripple effect in my environment. So it starts with you. Were you going to say something just then, Jackie?
Actually, that was me.
Okay.
This is Jackie.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the space of influence, one of the things that I am very consistent in, and that is my attire.
Mm.
And I think a lot of that goes back to a little bit of a generational difference because I personally had a 28-year corporate career.
Okay.
And so, the thought of dressing down or, coming to work, I would say borderline beyond a little bit casual.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had men, I've had women to say, you know what, Jackie? Number one, I absolutely always enjoy seeing you because I can't wait to see what you're going to have on. But the second thing is you've also influenced me where I say, you know what? If she can get up and, get dressed and come in here with jewelry and lipstick, and I should be able to do the same, And so it was one of those moments, right? Where that sphere of influence
Yep.
allowed others to say, okay, if this person can do this, I can make a choice because everything that you do in life goes back to a choice. Okay.
Absolutely.
If they can do this, you have inspired me enough to say, you know what, I can do better.
Absolutely. And that's without even necessarily trying. It's just being who we are.
It's
And
who
so
we
that
are.
really brings up a point that John talks about. No matter what room you're in or when you're there, you are always in this compass. And so somebody is paying attention. There is some influence that happens again with the way that you talk, how you respond to people, the way you forward or respond to an email. All of those things really make a difference. So we have to make sure that we are managing ourselves. And then he says, here's what we want to look at next. So if you have this compass, we're going to draw a couple things on it. I want you to draw an arrow down to the south, and that is positional influence is what he says. Now, positional influence means this: you have influence with these people only because of your position. You are put in charge, you are the leader, your name's on the door, you're the teacher. But John says this is the lowest level, even if you look at it positionally on the compass, this is the lowest level of influence. People follow you because they have to, not for any other reason. If you remove the have to, if I'm not going to get a write-up because of you or get in trouble because of you, then I'm not following you. So the thing is, there are some people who have been leaders for 30 years that still only have a positional level of influence. So that's the lowest level of influence. And so we want to move up in the compass, he says. And if you draw a line on yours, within your circle, if you want to go from east to west, this is that peer level of influence. But this is important and should not be overlooked. And John says for this, people's a lot of time like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm not here to make friends, or it's not that serious, or we're on the same level. We're looking to try to impress or lead those people who are above. But then he asks this question a lot. If you got promoted tomorrow, who would you be leading? And would they be willing to follow? What level of influence would you have with those people? So we don't want to overlook and say that they don't matter. I don't need influence at the peer level. Because when you're trying to get work done or trying to move forward ideas, we need to be able to have some level of influence without the title, right? Even for our colleagues, those who are on the project team, etc. So that's a higher level of influence, and people at that level follow you because they want to. So again, it's not just literally a peer or a colleague, but that peer level influence means, you know what? People follow me because they want to, not because they have to. And then lastly, if you draw an arrow up, and you can write at the top of your circle, influencing the influencers. So those who are responsible for decisions at a larger scale, they influence. Do I have influence with them? It's worth taking an inventory. Who are the people that I influence? And why? And we'll look at an inventory in just a moment. But influencing the influencers, this is where you're even leading up. Now, a couple of things are required here. because these people have no reason whatsoever to follow you, right? They may be above you in leadership. So to influence these folks, let me ask you first, and you can put in chat, and then I'll share my thoughts. So a person who has no reason. So, on that first list, there was people like Mark Cuban and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Oprah. Why would Oprah listen to you? What would need to happen for you to have influence in that kind of circle? So what would need to be present? Would like to hear your thoughts, and you can put that in chat. So hey there, Lakessa, Shalisa, Charmaine, Jackie, I think I see you unmuted there. So you can also share in chat if you don't want to share out loud, but I want us all to, if everybody would be willing to chime in with some kind of response. Go ahead, I think I saw you unmuted there. Is it Lakessa now unmuted?
Hey, yes. Hey, Sharon, how are you?
I'm well. Welcome.
I think in that space, I would say your personality
Okay.
could influence those in that era, simply because you're just being who you are. And sometimes the things that you do, people of that stature may not feel comfortable with being just who they are. So when you come in just being who you are, then that kind of allows them space to kind of be who they are at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think your personality and just being you is a great posture of influence.
That's awesome. That reminds me of, I was in a different training session, and someone mentioned that we weren't talking influence necessarily, but she was a person who was very outgoing and direct and willing to share opinions and thoughts. And so that's who she was by nature. What she shared in the meeting was how one of the senior leaders at like a networking event or like a company party approached her, or when she went over to say hi, that person asked her for her opinion on something. And it's not a person who would normally be in her sphere of influence, or so she thought. And the person they made the comment, hey, you are very willing to share ideas, and you're always, open and honest. What do you think about ... How do you feel? What are your ideas around? And in that moment, it was like, oh, whoa. Because it's like, what, first, somebody you're noticing and paying attention, but again, I am just being me. And so the thing is, that person wasn't asking everybody. That senior leader wasn't necessarily approaching everybody to ask, but because of who she was and how she was showing up in the workplace, said, you know what, I'd like to know what you think. I see you as honest. So these things are about perception as well, right? So Shalisa says the company you keep and surround yourself with can help with influencing the influencers. Something else that I'll add here is having a track record or some results, right? That can make a difference with influencing the influencers. You have proven reliability. You've shown yourself to be a resource, and there's some consistency there. Those kinds of things can help people see the results, right? They see what you've done, the giants that you've slain, right? So the idea like, okay, you've conquered some things. It's worth making note of. So that personal inventory for yourself is, as I'm looking to grow my influence, what circles is it that I want to move into or that I want to grow in? What am I doing? How am I connecting? Who do I know that's already connected there? Because the whole 6 degrees of separation idea, right, is if I want to change something with budget, but I don't work in budget and I don't know anybody who works in budget, I can start where I am. I can bloom where I'm planted. And someone that I know, if I assess my circle, connects to someone who knows someone who knows someone. I had a gentleman reach out to me with a request and said, hey, I'm trying to connect. I'm trying to do something that's research based. And one of the comments that stuck with me, it was just at the bottom of an email. He said, you know what? No connection is too small, because I realize that one thing will always lead to another. So he didn't say, only give me this caliber of person. He said, you know what? One thing leads to another. So I'm willing to talk to whomever is willing to talk to me about where I'm trying to go. Jackie, I see your hand.
Yes, I want to build upon a little bit about what Lakeisha said earlier about, even though she mentioned it as a personality, I refer to it as your personal brand. And so your brand shows up in many different ways. And absolutely, for me, it's about the energy,
Mhm.
as we like to call it, being able to read the room, your
Yes,
emotional intelligence. And
absolutely.
just last week, I was at a brunch, and it was a celebration brunch, and I had a really mixed table in terms of our generational differences, right? Probably maybe somebody at the table, maybe even as old as 80 years old. And before I left, the lady that was 80 years old said, "You know what? If I'm ever at another event,
Mhm.
I want to make sure that you're at my table."
Wow.
And I said, "And so what are you basing that on?" And
Mhm.
she said, "You were so much fun.
Mm.
You got our
Mhm.
table talking. We
Mhm.
were not stuffy. You just really made sure that everybody was just engaged."
Yeah.
And I said, "That's who I am.
Yep.
But I appreciate you giving me that feedback, because
Mhm.
sometimes you never know how you showing up is going to be received by others. Okay.
Absolutely.
I could have been at a
Absolutely.
table with a bunch of introverts,
Yep.
right? And they could have said, "Oh my God, she
Yeah.
is just like, oh, she's
Yes.
draining me."
Very,
But
and
that's
that's
what I
so good.
mean when I
That's so
said
good.
earlier about your Jackie juice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What you see with me is what you're going to get. And I
Mhm.
am extremely consistent in that regard.
Yes. Consistency matters. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And so what's interesting is, and this kind of segues into how when we're interacting with people, people are watching you, right? Because with our influence can grow. Um, so with your modeling, we can influence people by modeling. That means people watching us from afar, seeing what we do. But here's the truth, to touch on something Jackie mentioned: some people will like it and others won't. Because the truth is, there's so many different levels of influence, right? If you think about 5 people that you work with and you were to present an idea, some of those people are going to be like, "Yes, queen," or "Absolutely, great idea, love it. You are so inspiring." And then somebody else will be like, "I don't know about that." So our influence is different with people, right? And so if we want to grow our influence, we can start at that modeling level. But the truth is, as people are watching, they decide what they do and don't like based on personality, energy, etc. Right? So modeling, lots of folks can do this. Now, if we want to continue to move up our influence, though, we want to move from modeling and people just watching from afar to what are things that we can do to motivate other people. And here's something that is mentioned. John says this is where we get a little bit more up close and personal. And as we work our way up the pyramid, that's what happens. So level 1 is modeling. Uh, are you perceived as honest? Are you perceived as trustworthy? Then guess what? People give you permission a little bit more, right? So you increase your influence with those interactions. When you move to the motivating level, maybe here you encourage people a little bit more. You communicate on more of an emotional level, but guess what? Does that happen with everyone? Absolutely not. But with that person that you do have those conversations with, there may be reciprocal influence that happens, or sometimes it is just one way. But what we're doing with that motivating phase of influence is we're creating a bridge, we're building other people's self-esteem. Here's a quote that I really liked, it resonated with me, that I'll share, from the book. He says this from the motivating level: when people feel good about you and about themselves when they are with you, then your influence increases significantly. And so I'll repeat it if you're a note taker. When people feel good about you, oh my goodness, yes, I love Charmaine. Good times had by all, or just really inspiring, super knowledgeable, whatever that may be. So they feel good about you, but then also feel good about themselves when with you. Right? Why? Because you are adding value, you are motivating, you are encouraging them. It's not like, "Oh yes, sing my praises," but you're acknowledging them, right? You're pouring into that person, then your influence increases. And so let's go from motivating to, now you may have permission to even be a mentor. Now, I understand that there's matching and mentoring programs, but what we're talking about is not just the random pull a person out of the hat. Yep. A lot of times, mentors are people that are in an unofficial capacity, right? So as you look through your life, there may be people whom you mentor that they didn't ever officially say, "Will you be my mentor?" They just happen to call you when they have a problem or a concern, or they're trying to work through something in their marriage or in their business, or trying to get some feedback on something that was said in a meeting, right? But again, proximity, time spent as well. This is, John says about mentoring, it's pouring your life into others, helping them reach their potential. And then ultimately we get to multiplying. So this is not where we're only just adding value, but we're multiplying other good influencers. So the people who are connected with you that you're mentoring, they're using all the brains they have because you're encouraging them to do that, but they're using all the brains they can borrow. They may be borrowing from you. And now to multiply, they start doing that and reproducing with other people. They are becoming positive influencers who are modeling, motivating, and mentoring and multiplying. So we want to get to that multiplication level of influence, right? And again, that may be based on proximity, not just from afar off, always, but those better conversations, the mentoring, and again, we are influencing other people to become positive influencers and not just saying, look at how great of a job I did with my mentee, right? But to be able to say, wow, the person that I mentored is mentoring, and that person is mentoring. So we want to look at, so the challenge for each of us, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is where am I with different relationships and different people in my life? What is one thing I can do to move myself to the next level? And again, that won't be with everybody. We're not interested in that with everybody. What word does this provoke? What do you think? What feeling or emotion when you look at this? So I'll watch in the chat, or you can unmute to share.
I would say this represents strength and power.
Okay. Thank you. So strength, power.
Trust.
Jackie says trust. Shalisa, Charmaine, anything different for you?
I like the strength and power. I also like trust. I can't think of anything else right now.
Okay. It provoke any anxiety in anybody? No?
That was really what I was going with. I was like, it kind of makes me scared, but
Yeah. But why? Even if we lean into that, why?
fear of heights, I guess. I
Okay.
don't, and balancing, it's like you got the weight of something else on your shoulders while you're trying to balance what you got going on, is what I read.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Any thoughts? Go ahead, LaCassa.
But I'll also say this represents bold and fierceness
Mm-hmm.
because you are doing the impossible, the
Mm-hmm.
unexpected.
Yeah.
And you're doing it with something like this elephant and this giraffe. This is this is not a combination that you would have put together.
Yeah.
So the fact that they came together and
Mm-hmm.
collaborated to do something fierce and bold, that speaks volume.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So do you think that elephant has to have some level of influence with that giraffe, and even vice versa, for them to get out here in the middle of nowhere?
They have to trust each other. They
Each
have to be
other.
friends.
Absolutely. Because this is just not anybody, right? Not everybody would be like, hey, let's go out here and walk this tightrope. Are you, what? Thanks, but no thanks. And so the thing is, they do have to trust one another. They have to also trust themselves. But influence, again, the responsibility that comes with influence is people to be able to trust you, or they're willing to put their trust in you because of the influence that you have with them. So this is not anything that just happens quickly overnight, right? It has to be built, just like our influence is built. One other concept or thought to highlight is that people of positive influence add value to others. So here's what I'd like you to reflect and think on. And if you would, maybe just put one thing in the chat, one or two things. So take a moment to think. What is a way that you think you could add value to someone this week? What is something you could say or do that would add value to someone in your sphere of influence? Maybe you want them in your sphere of influence and they're not. We could still add value. So I'd like to see some ideas. I'll give you a moment to think and put something into chat. Giving a compliment is an immediate booster, right? People feel good. I appreciate you seeing or noticing me. Shalisa says, reminding people of what they're good at. Absolutely. Being present, showing appreciation. So I'd like you to get somebody in mind that you could add value to this week. Maybe one person professionally and one personally. It can be easier sometimes if we're doing this with friends. Maybe there's a colleague. Guess what? Maybe there's a relationship that's a little bit strained at work. That one person that's like, you stay in your corner and I stay in mine. You may not have much influence with that person, right? Offering to help or assist, seeing what they need, extending an olive branch, offering a compliment when they do something great in a meeting, making those personal deposits into their emotional bank accounts, Jackie adds, because we all have an emotional bank account. And with some people, we may be overdrawn. And the issue is each of our interactions is either a deposit or a withdrawal. And so we want to think about how can we make some withdrawals, right? We want positive bank accounts with people. And so we want to be in the positive with ourselves as well. So you can also, what are some things you can think to add value to yourself even after today? So John talks about an influence inventory. So here's some questions to reflect on. Now, what I did at the beginning of our time, I think I put some links in the chat. So there was a flip book that has some of these. I'm going to re-add that here so that you have these to reflect on after our time today. Take some time to think on, who do I influence? Where am I in the compass? Because again, every room I walk into, I'm somewhere in that compass. Maybe it's just a positional, maybe I'm working on peer, maybe I'm influencing up. Is it being positive or negative? Am I encouraging or influencing people to do things that are good? Dennis Rodman, John talks about this in the book. You know, he was an influencer. Adolf Hitler was an influencer, right? People followed, they listened, they said, yes, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Give me more, please. Now, you know, he mentions that Dennis Rodman often would be like, oh, I'm nobody's role model. I'm not trying to be a role model. I'm just out here doing me. Well, goes back to something even Jackie mentioned with your brand. There is still influence there, right? How we influence really makes a difference, which was one of the questions in that inventory. So John talks about a few different ways, and I'll just list them, won't go into detail here, but something for you to consider with your inventory is, as you think about the who's in your life, how am I influencing those who's? Am I using force and am I more manipulative? It would be a great idea even to ask these questions of those people, of your teams, of those whom you support or those who support you. Am I more of an exchange kind of influence person? We're both gonna win something. Are people following me because they want to? Maybe it's the je ne sais quoi. It's that certain something, that it factor, that personality, the energy, the brand that really resonates with them. Is it respect? And of course, these kind of go in order from least to greatest, right? So some of those ones at the top are not where we want to hang out. And if we find ourselves there, even if it's with our own children, how much influence do we have? Is it just positional? Ideally, you know, John says we want to move out of positional as fast as possible. We want people to follow us because they want to. They've given us their permission to lead, right? Giving us their permission to influence. These three questions are worth making note of, posting somewhere at work, on your computer, on your wall at home. People are asking these three questions about you all the time. Your verbal and nonverbal interactions, every touch point is answering these questions. Does Shalisa care about me? And they may be listening to the way that you're talking or communicating, how much empathy you're offering. Do you support my ideas, right? If I said I'm sick, do you not care? You just want your results, right? So do you care about me? Can Charmaine help me? If I show up with a problem, is it get somebody else to do it kind of energy? Is it, go check the policy first? Is it, well, I don't know, and then you kind of leave it there? Or do you go beyond to say, I don't know, but let's find out, or try this? Can you help me? Can I trust Jackie? And again, interactions, conversations that happen even about other people, all of those things are either building or busting your influence. Whether you're in a position of leadership with a title or not, people want to know. So remember, again, all those touch points, and if they can answer yes to these questions, then you are continuously building influence. And if right now the answer is no, if you were to ask so-and-so, they'd probably say no. They are your mission, should you choose to accept it. You don't get better at influence just only by taking a class. You get to learn a couple of things, a couple of points of reflection, and then you get to get out and apply them, right? And figure out, how can I add value? Offer that compliment, offer some support or help. Apologize if that needs to happen. Let people know that they can trust me, even if I say those things out loud and verbalize them. Here's if you have your phone with you, if you're not on your phone, then this is a QR code to an article about ways that you can increase your influence, and I believe it was through Forbes. And so I'm going to join you, and so I'll give you a moment if you want to grab your phone. Some of them are really reiterations of the things we're talking about now already. And so for you to reflect on is, what are some practical, tangible things I can do this week? And I want to share a few tips. Due to time, I want to move forward to make sure we cover as much ground as possible.
Excuse me, Sharon.
Yes.
I don't know why I personally have problems with the QR codes.
Okay.
It's not
so I can send it
populating.
after. I can
Okay,
send the link to
fantastic.
you. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So what are some ways to increase your influence? So John in the book talks about showing integrity. And so what I'm going to share with you, again, you all may already see it in the flip book. There are some questions that you can ask yourself. You can pose these to others to evaluate your integrity. How do I treat people and I can't gain anything from them? Questions about your transparency. How am I in the spotlight versus alone? My moral decisions, right? Are they changing or swaying? What are those influenced by? When I have something to say about people, do I talk to them or about them? Am I accountable? That's a great question, to at least one other person for what I think, say, and do. If I want to build influence, people are paying attention. Part of that brand, part of the modeling from afar, is where people are looking at and making assessments about you and the perception about what you do, say, and about that brand. So one challenge, you could try this week to help with building your integrity. Doing the little things. Make a note to yourself, this is not fun. Anytime you do any of the following. So you are holding you accountable. Remember the compass, and we said in the middle was the influence and the self-leadership? Yeah. Make a note, a mental note, put it in your phone. Anytime you don't tell the whole truth, you neglect to fulfill a commitment, whether it was promised or implied, you leave an assignment uncompleted, you talk about something that you might have been expected to keep in confidence, whether they said so or not. And so that goes back to that self-leadership, right? Because again, you are building or busting your influence with other people if you're talking to them about stuff and they're looking at you like, I'm sure so-and-so wouldn't want me to know that. Other ways to increase influence. To nurture others with what they need, helping them to move forward. So something you can do with nurturing, pick 3 people to encourage this month and send them a handwritten note. So that's a way you can nurture others. Pick 3 people to encourage and send them a handwritten note. Make yourself available to them. You can have faith in others. What does that mean? Find a strength. This was mentioned earlier. Find a strength in someone and point it out to them. Emphasize your belief in them. Help them to see themselves as successful and build on their past successes. So we can nurture people, 3 notes. Having faith, find a strength and point it out. This doesn't have to be the same 3 people. Listening. One idea here is to determine the need at the moment. So be present, be in the moment with people. This helps build your influence if you determine their need. Do they need to be comforted? Is this just to vent? Are they trying to persuade you of something? Do they need to feel validated? Are they trying to inform? Notice this isn't about assessing your needs. You're building influence when you're listening and assessing theirs and trying to meet those needs if you can. And so same thing with understanding people. Where are they coming from? Where do they want to go? How can I help? So those are questions that John says you can ask when you meet new people, right? So this isn't the people you already know you're sending the letters to. With understanding people, you build influence. You can build that and grow it more quickly if you have those questions in mind. Where do they come from? And this is a new person. Where do they want to go? What is their need now? And how can I help? And then articulating ways that you can be of benefit. That can, all of these connect into enlarging people. And so that may be someone decide that you're mentoring, right? And so adding value to yourself helps you to add value to others, right? So you want to make sure that you're taking care of and you're keeping your pitcher full so you're not continuously pouring out always. People are more willing to be mentored and to allow you to influence and to listen to you if they see you're taking your own advice, right? What's the thing people say all the time? Practice what you preach. To navigate for others may be helping them to identify their goals. What is their destination? So maybe that's asking questions, helping them to see their potential and helping them navigate to that if you can, being a connector. Connecting with people one-on-one, but being willing to connect them to others. Who do you know that they can get connected to that would benefit them? Asking the question, how can I help you or add value to you? And so some of that also with connecting to help with influence involves spending quality time. Is there someone at work you don't get along with, don't know very well, we're at odds, there's maybe some underlying tension? Can you be intentional about trying to connect? Leaning in, being assertive, saying, hey, I'd love to grab coffee because I realized at our last meeting, ... happened. Or I'd like us to get to a point to where we feel comfortable working together. You know, let's address the elephant in the room. So to really connect with people, and that may mean you go first. We can empower others to increase our influence. And so the question is, would I be willing to raise others to a level higher than my own? Wow. And what am I willing to do for that? Or is it, I mean, I'll help you a little bit with your little promotion, your little business, whatever it is. But so really thinking of empowering others and then to reproduce those other influencers. So they're modeling what they're seeing you do because of time spent and investment. So notice the things that are underlined there are the things that make you an influencer. Right? And so what is the one thing we can't do all the things all the time, not even with everyone. I can find those 3 people to nurture, to send the notes to. I can add value literally to everyone. The story Jackie shared earlier about being at the table reminds me of one that John Maxwell had in the book. And he said that they were waiting for a flight. And then the person, when they were still sitting in the airport, came on and was like, oh, bad news, we're delayed about 30 or 45 minutes. And of course, people are mad and annoyed and just deflated. Come on. And so what he decided to do with noticing that is he seized the moment and he went to a nearby shop and he bought a Coke for everybody, whatever the soda was or juice or whatever, water. He didn't even ask them. He just went over and bought 60 beverages. And the person was like, you want 60? Yes. Why? Well, because we're waiting and people may need something to drink. And then what happened is that became contagious. Even in that moment, the person behind the counter said, can I help? Absolutely. And so they went and handed out a soda to everybody, and people were like, what is what is this? And it was like, hey, we have to wait, so here you go. And so that one touch point, again, answering the questions, do you care about me? Can you help me? Can I help you? Can you trust me? Do I care about you? Sorry. It was a yes. But then, and so that helped lighten the mood just a little bit, that act of generosity. On the plane, he got on the plane and they were still waiting on the flight crew. He started passing out snacks. What? So this is before the flight attendants came. They allowed him to do it. He passed out snacks. So people are now eating and drinking and having a good time. The flight attendants show up. They're like, we'll get started with beverage service as soon as we can. People start laughing about it. And they're like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, we're good. And so people commented and realized, wow, this could have been a horrible situation. And it wasn't saying it, let me toot my own horn and people like me, but he built influence with people in that flight in that short amount of time. So figuring out when and where can I do that? Those touch points, how can I intentionally add value? And it's a selfless approach to building influence. So that's it. It was a fast and furious 60 minutes. And thank you for showing up and being in the room. And so there's a few pieces of homework, whether it's an inventory, reaching out to others. So I appreciate you. I put a link in the chat. So there's a survey there. So there's a feedback survey that you have. And so if you are interested, if you know someone else who may be interested in partnering with us, I'd love to talk more. And so there's another QR code, but I'll share. I'm going to follow up after this time and share with you the link, especially I know, Jackie, you mentioned that you can't scan the QR code, so I'll get that article to you. So that's all, folks. Hopefully you grabbed a few nuggets to share, to use, some seeds planted that become very fruitful in your life and those of others. And I'm signing off. I'm going to hang out for just a minute here. Thank you all so much. Happy holidays. Yes.